Hey everybody, Zeph again, coming back with another video tutorial in LSDJ for you. This is going to be the sequel to the A to Z command index that I did last time. And it's basically just going to go over the same commands, except I'm going to go into some of the more advanced and complicated stuff. So I recommend that you know your way around LSDJ pretty good before you come to a video like this. And make sure you've also checked out the other video that I did, the A to Z command index, because this is going to build on everything that I taught in that video. And I'm going to skip over some of the commands just because I basically covered them in the first video, so you're definitely going to want to check that out first. Okay, so I've just got my LSDJ window open here, and I've got a track loaded in because I'm going to use a couple samples from it to explain some concepts. So we're going to start off, and I'm going to talk about the A command. Okay, so right off the bat, the A command, like I said in the first video, it's for tables, and you should know that already. And basically there's two ways to use it that I didn't really cover last time, and so those two ways is you can have it in normal table mode, but then it's also got this automate option that you can turn on or off. And this is really handy. I can't even stress how many times I've used this for all sorts of my more ridiculous techniques. So I'm going to show you how to use the automate command right now. So I've got a sample loaded in from this song, and you can see it looks pretty simple. It's just a bunch of F5 notes and just a couple of changing instruments. Now you'd think that would sound pretty static, but I'll show you what it sounds like. Okay, sorry, my video program makes it a little choppy, but you should be able to get the idea. If you look inside each of these instruments, there's just two different instruments, and they're each running a separate table, but they're both in automate mode. So here, let me just crack open a new pattern here to show you approximately what the automate mode does. Let's hit a new note here. Okay, so if I put a bunch of notes in here, okay, if I play that, nothing's happening. Okay, that's because we don't have any table on it at all. But if we put on a new table here, and I'll just load up a blank one, what automate mode does is every time it re-triggers the note, instead of just playing through the table in a normal groove, it actually will iterate through each line of the table. So if I play now, every time it plays a new note, it goes down to the next line, and you can see it even froze here where it would go to the next line next, but it just restarts every time you hit start. So if we put something different on each of these lines, it will actually play the next line in the sequence. So we can demonstrate that really easily with the transpose. So let's have it go through a minor arpeggio here, and just let's have it loop that. So now every time it plays a note, it's actually just going to play the next. Okay, so you can see it's doing that, and you can have it do all sorts of cool things. So for example here, we're just going to have it pan left or right each time that it plays a note. Okay, so that's a really easy way to get some stereo width going on. So I'll show you what I did in this pattern up here. Okay, so you can see it's alternating between the two different types of notes. If I change them all to this one, it might get a little clearer here. Yeah. Okay. So each note it iterates through, I put a vibrato effect on all of them just because I like the way that sounds. But then it's also changing phase width with each note. So it's going from a 12.5% to a 25 to a 50. And then I have that offset, which is something I do fairly often, and I recommend it. It gives you a cool effect. So this one's repeating every 3 notes, and this one's repeating every 4. So, and this is doing a transpose effect. So, starts off on the root note, goes up an octave for the next note, goes back to the root note, and then it goes down an octave, and then it'll repeat that. And that alternates with this, because this one repeats every 3 and this one repeats every 4. So you get that kind of cool effect. So you can see, even though you have limited effects in LSDJ, even if you're just playing one note, you can still get something cool going on. And all this stuff down here, I guess I was just experimenting with it. Actually doesn't do anything, just in case that's confusing you. It stops at the H. Okay, another cool thing you can do with the commands is some volume changing stuff. Now, where did I put those? That pattern. Okay, let's make a new one here. Now, this song I apparently used all of the patterns in. Here. Let's just... There we go. Okay. So, I'll grab a blank, something blank here, turn the table off, and we'll put in an A command. And I think I have something loaded up here on... Yeah, okay. So here I've used the volume side of the table. Now this is a complicated technique too, where you can actually do more complicated volume envelopes. So I'm sure you're familiar with the envelope command, where you can either have it start somewhere and go down, or start somewhere and go up. If you use the table, you can actually do whatever you want. So I'll explain quickly what these numbers mean here, because they're a little confusing. Look first at the left-hand column here. That's which volume each of these steps is going to go to. But the steps don't follow the rest of these steps here, where it just goes down in time or on automated mode or whatever. It's completely independent, so ignore how this flows right now, because the volume side is different. The number on the right there, you can see I've got all 6s, is the number of ticks that it will stay on each note. So in the first video I explained each line on the step sequencer here is 6 ticks by default, and you can change that down in the groove setting. And so if each of them is 6 ticks, and I set each of these to 6 ticks, it will change from one volume setting to the next every step in the step sequencer. Okay, and so what I have here is it increasing in volume, coming to a point at 9 here, and then going back down. Okay, so you can see this is going through really quickly. I have that set to a groove of 2, so it's going through every 2 ticks. But this one, it'll change depending on how you set the these numbers here, the 6s. And so if you change those, it'll go quicker or slower. But anyways, that's a really handy thing you can do with tables too. Let me just double check, make sure I'm not missing anything to do with tables, and then... Oh yeah, here's a really useful one too. I use this effect basically all the time. Now this is going to integrate O commands, so I'll explain those while I'm going through the tables, because I use this one with tables all the time. Basically, O commands are your panning, your output, and you have the option of left, right, or none. And it seems strange that he would put none as an option in there. I'm not sure why Johan did that, but I'm really glad he did, because there's lots of different ways to use it. So what I have going on here is I'm just running a basic table on a standard note. Okay, and here we'll do a 10. Okay, so here's what I'm running. It's an output LR, which basically just means standard output, and then it switches to the, you can see they're a little blurred out. That's because it that's how you get 0 output, and that's when you just make a new O command. And then I have an H command so that it runs back at the top. So it'll basically output and then mute, and then output and then mute. Okay, really simple. I mean, it's just like playing the same note over and over again, but that will continue to run without interrupting the original note. So it's not like if you were to actually, put in a K command and then start the note again, and then put in a K command and then start the note again. you couldn't really affect the note at all, and it would just keep restarting. But if you use this technique with the O commands, the note continues. So here I'm going to set my vibrato type down, and then I'll show you what I mean with the pitch bend. So it'll start to play, and then I'll start pitch bending up, but it won't re-trigger the note. Okay, so you can hear it. It lets you do little glitchy cut-ins and outs and gating without actually re-triggering the note. So I use that in a lot of, you know, for build-ups and that sort of thing, really handy. And then what I've done here is I usually have this in my template. I just have a couple different groove commands running on that same table. So this is standard, 6 ticks per note, and then in 11 I have groove 1, which will be faster. Okay, other thing you can do with these is you can actually just pan left and right. So now it'll switch from being panned left to panned right, and doesn't change the actual sound, but since it does hard panning, it makes an interesting effect. Okay, and you can mess that around with basically any of the other techniques you want. Okay, so that's A commands. Moving on. C commands I think I covered pretty well in the first video. Not really sure there's much else to do with them, although there are endless ways to experiment and combine them with other stuff. D commands also covered pretty well in the first video. You can use those for triplets and for little grace notes and that sort of thing. E commands. Covered those pretty good too, but I guess I'll just show off what I came up with to do with E commands in this song. This is the song Glitch from my album with Animal Cannon, Parallel Processing, but this is a solo track from the album, so I did this one by myself. And like I said in the first video, E commands on the wave channel are a little bit more complicated because you can't actually change volume. You have 3 steps of volume. You've got E0, E1, and E2, and that's about all you can use, but you can still get some kind of cool volume effects going on. Okay, so all this is it's a standard wave channel instrument. And then I think this is starting off, yeah, this is starting at volume 3, and then it's cutting down to 2, and then completely out, and then back up to 1, and then up to 2, and I just kind of fiddled around and got what sounds good. So that's one way you can use E commands. Yep, so that's that. Moving on. After E commands, we have G commands. Okay. Like I said, these are really handy on tables, so you can basically make it run at any speed you want. You go down to the groove, make sure you pick a new one. If you change groove 00, it's going to change your entire song. So you usually want to start off on something else. And like I said, these are the number of ticks. One thing I didn't really get into is swing. So I'll show you how that works with another example. I can't remember how in depth I went with that, but we'll do a quick example here. So I'll put this to groove 5. And I've got that set at the standard 6/6, and so I'll start this playing, and then I'll go down here and change the groove, and you can hear how it changes. Oh, whoops. Okay. So you can hear there it's got a decent amount of swing to it. So that's useful. Even if you're not doing any sort of jazz or swing music, I've actually used it in some electro patterns, and it gives it a really cool effect. Just watch that anytime you change the groove command, when you're done with it, change it back in the next pattern, otherwise it'll keep affecting that channel for the rest of the song. Okay, so that's the G command. H command, okay. I covered most of the basics. You can use it to skip to the next pattern if you want to end a pattern here early. And in tables is where it really shines. So we'll get a new note going here. Okay, and we'll run table 0. Okay, so this will just run as usual. Now, what you'll usually do is have something going on in your table. So let's get just some changes in width here. Now, H commands are great. I use them in almost every table, basically just to loop whenever you're done what you want to do, so that it'll keep going. Let's slow this down a little. So if you don't have the H command, it'll just keep going all the way down, and it sounds a little weird. Yeah. But there are a lot more complicated things you can do with H commands too. You can actually nest them within each other. So if you want, you can have it repeat something here, and then say repeat that 4 times, and then it'll skip down and then repeat whatever's after that. So you can see at the top there, it says the number of times, and then the second digit is the destination. So if I want it to loop from this H command back to 0 4 times, I set the second digit to 0 like that, and then the first digit I want it to loop 4 times. So it'll loop 4 times, and then it'll skip past. Okay. Okay, so I said it loop 4 times. It actually will go back up twice. So if I put it in here, it'll come down, go back up, come down, go back up, and then come back down and skip. Yeah. And if you put it to 0, it'll go indefinitely, just so you know. So what you can do is, say I want to loop that, I'll put in 1, so it'll come down, go back up, and then come back down again, and then I want to change over to just some octave transpositions. Okay, so you can actually run a couple different tables within one table if you want to save space. Or if you want to, you can actually, I didn't really cover this when I went over the A command, but you can run the A command inside a table and it'll move to a different table. So if I want it to skip, oh, this is going to do some weird stuff. Say I want to go to table 4. Okay, so there's not much on that table, but you can see that it skips over there. And you can put in as many H commands as you want. So if you want it to loop that first one time, and then you want it to do 2 octave switches, and then okay, so we'll set that to 4, so it'll come down to here, run the octave switches, jump back up to 4 one time, and then it'll go down, and let's do a fade out. Okay. So it's actually not running the note long enough to get all the way through the table. So what we'll do is we'll speed it up a little bit. Okay, so you can see what's happening there. So that's H commands. Okay. K commands, okay. So I covered how they can chop things off and they basically just end whichever note is playing. But there are a cool thing or two that you can do with them in different instruments as well. I think I loaded up an instrument here, but we'll cover this from scratch. Okay, so I'll make a new table, and I'm just using table 0 right now. And this is just a standard note. What we're going to do is I'm going to show you how to make a cool instrument. So I think I picked this up from Danimal Cannon in one of his videos, but I'm not positive on that. At any rate, it's a cool thing you can do. So you want to set this to probably K1, or if you really want to, you can just put K on the second one there. And so it'll chop it off right away. Okay, now that doesn't seem terribly useful, but what you can do then is if you run R commands, what R commands do is they repeat this note really quickly. So if you say R command at 1, it'll repeat this note every tick. And since it's chopping it off every tick, you get some cool stuff. And you can change this number too. So say we repeat it every 2 ticks. And the reason I like this is because you can actually have pretty good control over when it repeats. So if you want, you can run that and then have it speed up and then slow down, and actually I think you can even do it without repeating the note. Yeah, sorry, the video software is slowing down my emulator here, but if you run this on a Game Boy, you can hear the effects pretty clearly. So that's a cool effect you can do with the K command. What I'm going to do too later is I'll actually walk through the full song and just give you a tutorial of everything that's going on there. Should cover a lot of new stuff too. L command, I don't think there's really much for the L command. Let's see what we have left here. We got the P command. Yeah. Okay, covered most of the L command, covered most of the M command. O command I did earlier in the video. P command, okay, so pitch bend, I covered that fairly well, but there are still, I'll just show you some of the cool things you can do if you kind of amp it up a little bit. So this is from the beginning of my song Glitch. Okay, so basically what this is, it's starts off kick drum. Okay, that's a standard wave channel note, but then as it hits here, it comes to a pitch bend. Now this is a pretty strong pitch bend downwards, and what LSDJ does is when it reaches the bottom of the register, which for pulse notes is about C3, it'll, oh, and this is a wave channel, so it'd be C2. It'll loop back over to the top and then keep coming back down, and depending on how quickly you do that, you get some pretty cool sounds going on. So this actually glitches all the way around, and then I slow the bend down, but it keeps bending where it is. So you can hear it loops all the way down, loops all the way down again, and then it catches it at the top, slows it down, and then plays a new note. Okay, and then this is the same thing. Just slightly different because I don't stop it here, and also I'm running a table which does octave shifts as it goes. Okay, and then another one here, the P0 command will stop the pitch bend wherever it is, with not even necessarily on a specific note. It can be in between notes. So you can hear, actually, depending on how smoothly your emulator runs, it might actually catch it on different notes every time. And if your Game Boy is inconsistent, you might actually get different notes, which can be interesting and fun and a little risky sometimes. But and then it just pitch bends up and wraps around the other way. And on my last one here, yeah, basically you can see these are those O glitch commands. So actually I should change this one back to what it was. So it cuts in and out, and like I said, it doesn't affect the original note, so it'll work throughout pitch bends. So I'm running a bunch of pitch bends with a bunch of crazy tables, and then the A command at the end here is just to remove all the tables. So you can hear it's glitching, and then stuttering, and then it holds out. So yeah, it's some cool stuff you can do with LSDJ. What do I have in here? Oh, for R commands. Okay, so let's go PR. Okay, I covered most of the R commands too, but this is a really cool one that I figured out for myself when I was messing around one time, and you can get some pretty sweet effects. This is for use on kit instruments. So LSDJ has a couple of kits in there that you can use by default, and what I'm doing is I'll show you how to set this up. So you want a basic kit. Doesn't really matter what notes you play, you can mess around with that later. We'll make a new table. We'll go in here, and in the table we want two things. We want a pitch bend. Okay, and you can set that. You probably don't want it too high or too low. Let's do PFF, go down one. And if you just play that on a normal note, you won't notice much. It's maybe a little lower than usual. But what you can do is if you run a retrigger on there at the same time, or a repeat, So let's do repeat 2. It'll keep repeating the note and pitch bending down. Okay, and you can run different pitch bends and different repeat values, and then actually you can layer different notes together. So you can hear, you can get some pretty cool stuff going on. This is really fun to run on vocal samples and custom samples as well. It's cool for getting like the little glitchy effects and build-ups in transitions and that sort of thing. So, like always, I highly recommend you just experiment and figure things out for yourself, and mess around with things and you know, listen to LSDJ songs and pick out what you can from what they're doing, from some of your favorite artists and stuff. V commands, I think I covered Z commands pretty good, but we'll see. Oh, there's one thing you can do with V commands here. I think. Oh, okay. This was actually a section based on the envelopes. Basically, if you lower everything, layer everything together, I'll just go back to E commands for a second here. Anyways, you can hear what some fading in and fading out can do, but that's off track. Okay, so here we got a basic, another standard instrument, and this is an effect I use from time to time. I use this one in the song Ghetto Blasted a lot. What I'll do is basically you can like layer techniques together. So if you run that glitchy stutter on a note, like I said, it doesn't affect P commands, it doesn't affect V commands either. So if you run a vibrato while that's going, you can get, you can hear it stuttering in between the vibrato. And if you change your vibrato speed to okay, and again, that's something that'll sound better if your emulator isn't slowing down on you. But yeah, that basically covers it. I'm going to have a video coming up going through the rest of this track and basically just walking through everything I did to pull it together. And I realize now I've done a lot of kind of weird stuff and kind of cool stuff in this song too. So stay tuned for that, a walkthrough of Glitch by me, Zeph, and you can also download the save files for the new album I've done with Danimal Cannon, which is releasing January 15th. If you're watching this video, it's probably already released, and you can go and buy it, and all of the save files are in there as well. So thanks for tuning in. Keep chipping.